Question everything. Escape the illusions you were raised with. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. There's a quiet kind of prison most people never see. It doesn't come with bars or locks or guards. It comes dressed as tradition. It speaks in the voice of your childhood. It hides in plain sight, in phrases like "that's just how it is," or "this is what a good life looks like." And without realizing it, you build your identity inside walls you never chose, walls inherited through repetition, not reflection. This book is about seeing those walls, not to tear them down in rage, but to walk around them in clarity. You were not born with beliefs. They were given to you, passed down like heirlooms, sometimes with love, sometimes with fear, always with impact. Ideas about who you should be, what matters, what's dangerous, what's worth chasing. Scripts so ingrained they start to sound like your own thoughts. But what if they aren't? The philosopher J. Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Those words do not accuse. They awaken. They remind us that adapting to dysfunction isn't strength, that sometimes sanity looks like discomfort, and that truth often whispers where no one's looking. This is not a book of answers. It's a book of questions, the kind that don't promise comfort, but promise freedom. Because freedom doesn't begin with rebellion, it begins with recognition. With the courage to ask, is this really mine, or did I inherit it without consent? You don't have to destroy everything. You don't have to walk away from your roots, but you do have to look with new eyes. You do have to choose, consciously, what stays and what goes. You are not here to play a part written before you were old enough to speak. You are here to write, to revise, to question everything not out of bitterness, but out of hope. Hope that there's something more than the script, something real, something true. This book is your permission to pause, to see, and to begin again, not louder, not faster, but freer. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Script You Didn't Write. Before you knew what a choice was, a life was chosen for you. You were born into a script, invisible, inherited, enforced. To be polite. Sit still. Say thank you. Respect authority. Don't ask too many questions. Be successful, but not arrogant. Be humble, but not too small. Make something of yourself, but don't stray too far from what's expected. These weren't written on paper. They were etched in tone, in glances, in the quiet corrections you learned to obey. From your first steps, the stage was already set. Roles were handed out like costumes: the good student, the obedient child, and the ambitious adult. You were taught your lines with smiles and punishments, praise and withdrawal, and like any talented actor, you learned to perform them well, so well in fact, that you forgot it was a performance. But something in you has begun to stir. Not anger, exactly, not defiance, something quieter, like a faint knocking behind a closed door, a restlessness. A suspicion that the world you've been living in might not be real, or at least not real enough. The truth is, many of your beliefs were shaped before you had the tools to examine them. You absorbed the values of your parents, the fears of your teachers, the assumptions of your culture, not because you chose them, but because children do not yet know they can choose, and so we inherit everything, the wounds, the dreams, the unspoken rules, we carry them as our own. But there comes a moment, and maybe this is yours, when the lines feel hollow in your mouth, when success doesn't feel satisfying, only exhausting, when the applause starts to sound like noise, when being good feels like being erased. That moment is sacred. Not because it gives you answers, but because it finally gives you the right question: what if I didn't write this? This is the beginning of awakening. Not a rebellion, but a return to yourself, and to the quiet voice that existed before the scripts. To the original questions buried beneath layers of expectation. Who am I, beneath what they told me to be? What do I truly value, apart from what I was taught to want? Escaping the illusion begins not with anger, but with honesty, by looking directly at the patterns you've performed and asking, is this mine? Not everything inherited is wrong, but nothing should go unexamined. Some beliefs will survive the scrutiny and become your own. Others will fall apart under the weight of truth. Let them. This process isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't demand you cut ties or burn bridges. It asks something far harder: that you begin to see clearly, that you stop living from unconscious loyalty, that you become curious, not cynical, brave, not reactive. Because freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's knowing why you want it. It's the clarity of standing in a world of noise and recognizing your own voice. And that voice, when you hear it, will not sound like rebellion. It will sound like coming home. You are handed a script, but you are not bound to perform it forever. You can pause. You can question. And slowly, you can begin to write your own. Many of your core beliefs were inherited, not chosen. Performing a role well doesn't mean it's the right one. Questioning your script is the first step to authorship. What belief do you live by that you've never truly examined? Identify one inherited rule you follow daily. Ask yourself, who gave this to me, and do I still want it? Chapter 2. The Theater of Normal. Imagine a theater so vast, so convincingly built, that no one questions whether it's a stage at all. The lights are arranged to mimic sunlight. The painted skyline never shifts. The walls echo with the same comforting lines, rehearsed by generations. And the audience? They're actors too, playing roles they didn't choose in a script they've forgotten to question. Welcome to the performance called normal. Normal is not neutral. It is constructed, curated, and enforced. It tells you when to speak, what to desire, who to trust, and how to live. It decides which dreams are admirable and which are foolish. It whispers, "This is just how things are," with such conviction that even doubt feels dangerous. From the moment you enter this world, the production is already underway. The costumes are waiting. The marks are drawn on the floor. And before you can ask why the set looks the way it does, someone is guiding you toward your place. Sit here. Wear this. Smile on cue. But here's the truth: the world you call normal is not a universal truth. It is a cultural script designed for predictability, not liberation. Systems need order. Institutions crave control. Culture prefers conformity. And so normal becomes the great illusion, powerful not because it is right, but because it is repeated. This illusion is held together by a collective agreement. If enough people believe the stage is real, it becomes real, at least socially. When you question it, you don't just challenge an idea, you challenge the invisible scaffolding that holds the entire production together. And that's why questioning normal feels so threatening, even if nothing is technically stopping you. Think of how dissent is treated in polite conversation. Raise your voice against conventional paths, the 9-to-5 ladder, the mortgage, the well-lit suburban smile, and you'll often be met with silence, nervous laughter, or gentle correction. Not because others are cruel, but because they, too, are trying to protect the illusion. It's scary to realize the skyline is painted, that the applause is pre-recorded, that the script might be optional. And yet, this fear is a door. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign you're broken. It's evidence you're waking up. To see the theater is not to burn it down, but to choose whether you want to keep acting in the same play. To realize that roles are tools, not cages, that approval isn't proof, that normal isn't sacred. You don't have to scream at the audience or storm off stage. You only need to step into the wings for a moment, pull back the curtain, and ask, who built this set? Who cast me in this role? And what would happen if I stopped playing? Not everyone will understand. Some will call you ungrateful, reckless, or lost. But remember, the strongest illusion is the one everyone is too afraid to question. Your courage is not in having all the answers. It's in daring to look at the set with honest eyes. Because when you finally see it, the plywood behind the skyline, the wires above the stars, something incredible happens. You don't lose your place in the world. You find your footing for the first time. You're no longer a character. You're a creator. No longer confined by the story, but capable of crafting one. The stage still exists. Others will keep performing, but you'll know. And that knowing, that quiet clarity, is where freedom begins. Normal is a constructed illusion, not an objective truth. The fear of questioning it is a sign of awakening. You can choose whether to keep performing. Where in your life are you living by normal without asking if it fits you? Notice one norm you follow automatically today. Pause, reflect, and ask, is this real or just rehearsed? Chapter 3. When the applause feels hollow. At first it feels like success. You hit your marks. You follow the path. You do what's expected, maybe even better than expected. The crowd claps. Smiles flash. Doors open. You're praised for being responsible, talented, and driven, and for a while, you believe it means something. Maybe it does. But eventually, the applause begins to sound strange, like it's echoing in a room that isn't yours. This is a moment many dismiss too quickly. They call it burnout, or restlessness, or just the price of being an adult. But underneath the surface, something more significant is unfolding. It isn't that your life is falling apart, it's that the life you built no longer fits. You're waking up inside a role you once worked hard to earn, and now you're questioning why you're still playing it. There is a quiet despair that comes from doing everything right and still feeling wrong. You check the boxes, you climb the ladder, you make the money, get the praise, and post the pictures. But there's a subtle hollowness in your chest, the kind you feel when everyone is clapping for a performance you no longer believe in. No one warns you about this moment. The script tells you happiness will come if you follow the rules. Work hard, stay focused, delay gratification, sacrifice your joy for your resume. One day you'll arrive. But arrival isn't what they said it would be. You're there, wherever there is, and yet some part of you feels miles away. This dissonance is not failure. It's revelation. You're not broken. You're seeing clearly. The applause feels hollow not because you're ungrateful, but because you're no longer confused. You're beginning to realize that external validation is a shallow substitute for inner alignment. And this is where the deeper question begins to form. Not how do I succeed, but what does it mean to succeed on my terms? It's a question the script cannot answer. It was never written to help you flourish. It was written to help you function, to fit, to keep the scene moving smoothly. But function isn't the same as fulfillment, obedience isn't the same as purpose, and applause isn't the same as truth. When the cheers die down and the crowd goes home, you're left with yourself. The silence isn't empty. It's honest. There's nothing wrong with being celebrated. But ask, are they applauding the real me, or just the role I've mastered? Because if the applause demands your disguise, then every ovation is a deeper betrayal of self. This is the beginning of a different kind of success, one not built on performance, but presence, not measured by how well you fit the mold, but by how fully you inhabit your truth. You don't need to abandon your life, but you may need to edit the script or toss it all together. The applause will fade either way. The performance ends eventually. But what remains, when the lights dim and the curtain falls, is the self you bring into that quiet. And that self, raw, curious, unmasked, is worth far more than any standing ovation. External success doesn't guarantee internal fulfillment. Feeling hollow is often the first sign of awakening. True success begins when you stop performing and start aligning. Where in your life are you being praised for something that no longer feels true to you? Notice one area where you're chasing approval. Pause and ask, if no one clapped, would I still choose this? Chapter 4. The Power of a Question. A question is not a gap in knowledge. It is a key. A signal flare. A crack in the surface of certainty through which light begins to pour. Most people don't live by answers. They live by assumptions dressed as truth, handed down from family, absorbed from school, reinforced by media, and cemented by repetition. These answers are rarely examined, because they wear the disguise of common sense. Of course this is how things are. Of course this is what matters. Of course this is who I'm supposed to be. But every illusion, no matter how convincing, begins to tremble under the weight of a sincere question. Not the questions meant to impress or debate, not the kind offered with a smirk or a sneer. The real ones are quieter, almost childlike. They sound like, why do I believe this? What if I'm wrong? Who benefits from this belief staying unchallenged? Questions like these are dangerous in the best way. They disrupt the autopilot. They shake loose what's been lodged in place for years. They don't offer quick answers. They offer something better, permission to pause, to look again. To hold up a belief to the light and turn it in your hands. This is where transformation begins, not by collecting more facts, but by clearing space for truth to emerge. A cluttered mind, packed with unquestioned certainties, has no room for wisdom. But a questioned mind? That is fertile ground. That is where clarity takes root. Questions are not weakness. They are the marks of strength. It is easy to follow a path already paved. It is harder to ask where it leads, and if it was ever yours to walk. Children ask questions until they're taught to stop, until curiosity is replaced by compliance, until asking becomes inconvenient. But the soul never forgets how to wonder. It only waits for permission. And when you start asking again, really asking, you'll notice something. The world won't collapse. Your identity won't shatter. In fact, quite the opposite happens. What was shaky falls away. What's real begins to rise. You become lighter, not lost, more grounded, not more confused. Every meaningful shift begins with a question. Not because the question fixes anything, but because it invites you back to the beginning, to a place before assumptions, before performance, before fear. It returns you to the raw edge of your own awareness. You don't need to have all the answers. In fact, chasing perfect answers can become another illusion. The goal is not certainty. The goal is clarity. And clarity doesn't always arrive neatly. It comes slowly, like fog lifting at dawn. Each question asked is a match struck in the dark. So ask. Ask even if it feels silly. Ask, even if no one else is asking. Ask until the answers you've inherited either hold strong or fall apart. Ask not to destroy, but to discern. Ask like your freedom depends on it, because it does. A single question can't change your life, but the habit of questioning, that can dismantle an entire illusion, that can rebuild you from the inside out, that can set you free. Questions are not signs of doubt but invitations to clarity. Sincere questioning exposes illusions and reveals truth. You don't need better answers, you need better questions. What is one belief you've never dared to question, and what might happen if you did? Write down 3 beliefs you hold. For each ask, why do I believe this? Who told me it was true? Chapter 5. Who profits from your programming? Every belief you hold serves someone. The only question is, does it serve you? Most programming is invisible by design. It doesn't shout or demand. It whispers. It rewards obedience with comfort. It trains without resistance. From childhood, you are shaped by messages carefully packaged as truth. But behind every normal belief is a beneficiary. And if you trace the benefit far enough, you will begin to see the architecture of control. Consider the scripts you've lived by. Work hard and you'll be secure. Don't question authority. Buying more means you're doing well. Stay productive. Be agreeable. Fit in. Who wins when you believe these things? Who grows rich, powerful, or protected when you accept them without pause? Follow the incentive trail. When you spend to feel worthy, the marketplace wins. When you fear failure, industries of self-improvement profit. When you obey without examination, institutions remain unchallenged. When you compete endlessly, those at the top stay there. Programming isn't random. It's engineered to keep the machine running, efficiently, predictably, and profitably. Even values that seem wholesome can be weaponized. Success becomes a chain when it's defined by external achievement. Respect becomes silence when it's used to suppress dissent. Responsibility becomes self-abandonment when it demands sacrifice without boundaries. You're told these are virtues, but if they cost you your clarity, they become cages. This is not a call to paranoia. It is a call to perception. Seeing the strings doesn't mean you're a puppet. It means you're finally aware there are strings at all, and with awareness comes the power to choose, to keep what aligns, to release what exploits. Programming often wears the face of care. We only want what's best for you, but best by whose definition? Often those who love you are also programmed, repeating what they were taught, perpetuating patterns they never questioned. The system self-replicates, not out of malice, but momentum. The challenge isn't just escaping external control, it's recognizing internalized control. You may find yourself resisting rest, feeling guilty for joy, policing your own thoughts. That's when you know the programming worked. You became your own warden, enforcing beliefs you never consented to. But here's the shift: questioning doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you awake. You're not betraying your culture, your family, or your past by asking who profits from your beliefs. You're honoring yourself by refusing to be used. And the truth is, freedom isn't always celebrated. A person who thinks for themselves becomes unpredictable, unmarketable, unmanageable, but also unshakable. Because when your values are chosen, not inherited, you cannot be manipulated so easily. You know what you stand for. And more importantly, you know why. So begin to ask, gently but persistently, Who benefits from me believing this? Who gains if I stay small, silent, or scared? And what might change if I opted out? Not all programming is poison. But even the good must be examined, because blind belief, even in virtue, is still blindness. You are not a machine. You are not a product. You are not here to play a part written by invisible hands. You are here to wake up, to look behind the curtain, and to reclaim your mind. That reclamation is power. And that power begins the moment you ask, whose voice is this, and do I still believe it? Many beliefs are designed to benefit systems, not individuals. Even well-meaning programming can become a form of control. Freedom begins with examining who profits from your obedience. What belief do you hold that might be serving someone else more than it serves you? Choose one routine belief you live by. Ask yourself, who benefits if I keep believing this, and do I agree with that exchange? Chapter 6: The Myth of the Good Child. The good child is an invention, an image painted in soft tones, framed by obedience, and hung on the walls of expectation. From early on you were taught what it meant to be good. Be quiet. Be agreeable. Say the right thing. Don't upset the adults. Don't question the rules. Don't express too much. The good child is praised for fitting in, not for standing out, for being easy to manage, not hard to ignore. It's a role crafted less for the child's growth than for the comfort of those in charge. But beneath the polished behavior often lies a quiet erasure. To be good, you had to suppress the inconvenient parts of yourself, the loud, the curious, the wild, the unsure. You learned which emotions were rewarded and which were punished. Joy was fine, but not too loud. Sadness was tolerated, but only briefly. Anger? That was dangerous. And so you folded. You became smaller than you were. You polished your rough edges and hid your questions. This was not your fault. It was survival. You weren't wrong for adapting. Children are wired to preserve connection, and if being good was the cost of love, you paid it. You played the part. You excelled. You learned the script. But the cost wasn't cheap, because in becoming the good child, you also became a stranger to yourself. Years later, the pattern lingers. You avoid conflict, even when your truth burns inside you. You say yes when you mean no. You smile to maintain peace. You apologize for existing too loudly. The world still praises your composure, but inside you ache, not from failure, but from invisibility. The applause is loudest when you're least yourself. The myth of the good child is not about goodness at all. It's about control. It teaches that worthiness is earned through performance, that love is conditional, that being accepted means being less. And when that story becomes internalized, it becomes your measure. You feel guilt for setting boundaries, shame for wanting more, fear for telling the truth. But here's the shift. You can be good without being obedient. You can be kind without being compliant. You can be whole without being pleasing. True goodness is not found in perfection, but in presence, in showing up with your full self, messy, honest, real. Letting go of the good child doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means releasing the illusion that your value depends on your silence. It means honoring the parts of you that were hidden, not because they were wrong, but because they made others uncomfortable. And it means recognizing that the version of you who survived by pleasing others was brave, but not final. You don't need to rebel loudly. You only need to return to the you who danced before they were told how, who spoke before they were shushed, who knew what they wanted before they were trained to doubt it. That self still exists. Not lost, just buried under layers of praise. The good child is a costume, a convincing one, but you are not a role. You are not applause. You are not a reward for good behavior. You are a full being, whole even in your disobedience, worthy even in your questions, loved even in your truth. The good child identity often demands self-erasure for approval. People-pleasing is a survival strategy, not a personality trait. Wholeness requires reclaiming the parts of you that were hidden. Where in your life are you still performing the role of the good child, and at what cost? Speak one honest truth today that you would usually withhold in order to appear good. Let it stand without apology. Chapter 7: The Illusion of Success. Success is the most seductive illusion of all. It glitters like a distant city on the horizon, promising fulfillment, respect, arrival. From the beginning, you were taught to chase it. Grades turned into trophies. Trophies into accolades. accolades into titles, salaries, and the quiet envy of others. You were told that success would make life make sense, that once you had it, the noise would settle, and the striving would stop. But the city keeps moving. Every milestone becomes a mirage. You reach the top of one hill only to find another waiting. You make the money, only to want more. You earn the praise, only to fear losing it. You build the life, only to wonder why it feels so fragile. Success, as it's sold, is never truly about sufficiency. It's about scarcity. It survives by whispering, "You're almost there, almost respected, almost secure, almost happy," but never quite. The illusion works because it feels achievable, but only if you keep running. What no one tells you is that success, defined by external metrics, is a moving target controlled by others. It can be revoked, redefined, replaced. One day you're admired, the next forgotten. One year your choices are bold, the next, they're foolish. Tether your worth to this script, and you will spend your life performing for an audience that's never satisfied. You begin to lose yourself slowly, not all at once. First, you compromise your rest, then your time, then your truth. Until one day you look around and realize the life you've built doesn't feel like it belongs to you. It looks impressive, it might even inspire others. But it doesn't fit, not because it failed, but because it was never yours to begin with. This is the heart of the illusion, the belief that if enough people approve, you must be on the right path. But applause is not alignment, image is not identity, and performance is not purpose. Success can be a costume too, tailored and admired, yet unbearably tight. What if success wasn't something to chase, but something to define? What if it wasn't measured in accumulation, but in alignment? Not in how high you rise, but in how honestly you live. The illusion breaks when you stop climbing someone else's ladder and start building your own foundation. That doesn't mean abandoning achievement. It means examining it, peeling away the layers until you find the core. What do I truly value? What am I willing to trade for this version of success, and is it worth it? The world may not understand your answers. That's fine. The world profits from your confusion. Clarity doesn't need consensus. When you define success for yourself on your terms, by your values, you become untouchable in the best way. No title can grant your worth. No failure can steal it. Success isn't wrong. But the illusion of success, the story that says your life is only as meaningful as your productivity, your wealth, your influence, that story is a trap. And the most dangerous thing about a trap is how comfortable it can feel when everyone else is inside it too. So pause. Look around. Ask yourself if the path you're on is leading you home, or just deeper into the performance. Because the only success worth having is the kind that lets you breathe. Traditional success is often a moving target that leads to self-betrayal. Alignment, not applause, is the truest measure of fulfillment. Redefining success on your terms is an act of liberation. What version of success are you chasing, and who defined it for you? Write your own definition of success in one sentence. Let it reflect your values, not someone else's expectations. Chapter 8. Authority isn't wisdom. Authority wears many robes, badges, degrees, titles, uniforms, pulpits. It speaks with certainty, walks with confidence, and rarely pauses to question itself. From a young age you were taught to trust those who held the mic, the rulebook, the keys. Respect your elders. Obey your leaders. Follow the experts. Somewhere along the way, obedience became synonymous with truth. But authority, by its nature, is not earned by being right. It is granted by position, often passed down through structures built long before you arrived. It commands compliance, not understanding. It demands belief, not exploration. And while it can be a force for order, it can also become a substitute for wisdom, a polished mask that hides fragility beneath. True wisdom doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't lean on credentials or insist on deference. It invites you to look closer, think deeper, and sit longer with discomfort. Wisdom isn't concerned with being followed, it's concerned with what's real. It teaches through humility, not hierarchy. There's a quiet danger in mistaking authority for truth. Because when someone sounds confident, wears the right label, or quotes the right facts, it's tempting to outsource your discernment. You stop thinking critically and start echoing. You defer your intuition in favor of what's correct. and slowly, without realizing it, you hand over the steering wheel of your own mind. History is full of examples: people with power enforcing policies that caused harm, institutions preserving injustice under the guise of order, experts promoting systems later revealed as flawed, even dangerous. It's not that all authority is malicious, it's that authority, unchecked, becomes insulated. It begins to believe its own performance. This is why questioning isn't rebellion, it's responsibility. It doesn't mean rejecting everything, but refusing to kneel blindly. It means bringing your full presence to every idea, every instruction, every claim, not with hostility, but with honest curiosity. Is this true? Is it useful? Does it align with what I know to be right? You are not less intelligent because you don't have the same titles. You are not less wise because you speak quietly or ask instead of assert. Authority doesn't own the truth. It only manages perception, and when you remember that, the spell begins to break. Sometimes, the deepest insight comes from the margins, and from the person without the microphone, from the whisper, not the roar. Wisdom often lives in the places authority overlooks, in the lived experience, in the contradiction, in the questions no one else is asking. Respect can be given. Deference should be earned. Fire and truth must always be tested. Even the most trustworthy voices are still human, capable of error. Shaped by bias, influenced by incentive. To follow someone blindly is not loyalty, it is self-abandonment. And yet, the point is not to distrust everything. Suspicion alone is not liberation. The point is to bring your discernment everywhere, to reclaim the authority of your own perception, to hold what you're told up to the light, and say, "Let me see for myself." Because when you begin to see clearly, you won't need to reject all authority. You'll simply stop worshipping it. You'll no longer be swayed by volume, prestige, or position. You'll recognize wisdom by its humility, its openness, its resonance. And you'll know the difference, not because someone told you, but because you've learned to trust your own seeing. Authority and wisdom are not the same, and often not found in the same place. Trusting without discernment leads to self-abandonment. Freedom grows when you reclaim your right to question, even the confident. Where in your life have you accepted something as truth just because someone in power said it? Take one expert opinion you've accepted and research an opposing view. Ask, what do I actually believe, beyond the credentials? Chapter 9. Burning the costume. Every role you've played was stitched from expectation. You wore the costume because it fit once, or at least it made you feel safe: the achiever, the caretaker, the tough one, the smart one, the helper, the one who held everything together. These roles became armor, protection against rejection, confusion, chaos. You didn't choose them freely. You chose them because you had to. At first they worked. They earned you praise, belonging, a sense of control. You learned how to show up in the way others needed you to. But over time, the fabric began to itch, the seams grew tight. The mask that once felt empowering began to suffocate. And beneath it all, a deeper self waited, unseen, unheard, unperformed. Costumes are not lies. They are strategies. You played a part to survive, to be loved, to avoid pain. But what begins as survival can become a prison if never questioned. Eventually, the performance takes over. You forget where the role ends and you begin. You confuse the costume with your character. But life keeps whispering. Not through catastrophe, but through small signs: a restlessness in your chest, a sudden exhaustion after social gatherings, a voice in the mirror that no longer sounds like your own. These are the tremors that precede awakening. Not because something outside is breaking, but because something inside is trying to breathe. Burning the costume isn't about destruction. It's about return. Return to the original self, the one that existed before the act began. That self may be quieter, less polished, less easy to categorize. But it is true, and truth is worth every inch of unraveling. The fire doesn't start all at once. It begins with honesty. A recognition that what once protected you is now confining you. That you're tired of pretending, of performing, of trying to meet standards that were never yours. That you'd rather be misunderstood than misaligned. It is terrifying, this letting go. You risk disappointing others, you risk standing out. You risk losing the applause, but you also risk staying hidden for the rest of your life. and no amount of acceptance is worth the cost of vanishing inside your own story. So start gently. Loosen the buttons, aim the roles you've played. Ask yourself who they served, and who you became to wear them. Did they come from love, or fear? From truth or pressure? Did they reflect you, or reflect who others needed you to be? And when the time comes, light the match. Burn the version of you that lived only for approval. Let the smoke rise. Let the ashes fall. This isn't an end, it's a beginning, a ritual of reclamation. The moment you choose essence over image, reality over performance. You won't walk away from the fire fully formed. You'll walk away raw, exposed, uncertain, but you'll also walk away real. And realness is the soil where everything meaningful grows. No costume can contain your fullness. No role can define your wholeness. You were never meant to be anyone's idea of acceptable. You were meant to be free. Roles and personas often begin as protection, but can become prisons. Burning the costume means releasing who you pretended to be for survival. True freedom begins with the courage to be real, even if it's uncomfortable. What role have you been playing that no longer reflects who you truly are? Identify one situation this week where you feel pressured to perform. Instead, show up with honesty, even if it's quieter, messier, or different. Chapter 10. Curiosity over cynicism. There is a fork in the road that every awakened mind must face. It appears quietly, just after the illusions fall, when the paint begins peeling from the stage and the old scripts no longer stick. One path leads to cynicism, the other to curiosity. Both are born from the same source, disillusionment, but they take you in opposite directions. Cynicism is tempting. It feels like armor. Once you realize the world isn't what it claimed to be, once you see how beliefs are manipulated, how systems serve themselves, how masks are worn without question, it's easy to turn bitter, to laugh at sincerity, to scoff at hope, to withdraw behind the cold protection of being unimpressed. But cynicism, while sharp, is hollow. It is not clarity, it is calcification. It tells you nothing matters, but offers no way forward. It dresses up as intelligence, but often conceals pain. It's the voice of the betrayed turned indifferent, the dreamer turned skeptic. It burns everything down, but refuses to build anything in its place. Curiosity, by contrast, is soft but strong. It doesn't flinch at contradiction. It doesn't need all the answers. It simply refuses to stop asking. Where cynicism shuts the door, curiosity leaves it ajar. It says, I see the flaws, and I still want to understand. I see the cracks, and I wonder what might grow through them. To choose curiosity is to resist the urge to harden. It is to say, even after the lies, I believe there is still truth worth seeking. Not naive truth, not perfect truth, but real truth, the kind found through presence, experience, and reflection. It is a posture of openness, not gullibility, a stance that refuses to let disappointment become dogma. Curiosity is not weakness. It is the quiet bravery of the mind that has seen darkness and still seeks light. It's the child in you that survived the loss of innocence and emerged more awake, not more bitter. It's the refusal to let wounds become walls. And it is, above all, the trait that keeps you human when everything around you pushes toward numbness. You don't need to believe everything again. But you do need to believe in something, or you will start to rot inside your own doubt. The goal is not to return to blindness. It is to move forward with vision, and with discernment. With the ability to say, I no longer trust easily, but I do still trust slowly. Cynicism demands nothing of you but distance. Curiosity demands your presence. It asks that you stay close enough to feel again. To be wrong. To be changed. It makes room for nuance. It allows wonder. It lets beauty exist alongside betrayal. That's not weak. That's sacred. So when the old illusions fall, resist the urge to close. Stay soft. Stay awake. Let yourself marvel at the mystery instead of mocking it. Ask the questions that no one is asking, not to win arguments, but to rediscover truth on your own terms. You are not here to be jaded. You are here to be free. And freedom is found not in knowing everything, but in remaining teachable, in choosing to look again. In leaning in when the world tells you to shut down. Choose curiosity. Not because it's easy, but because it keeps your soul intact. Cynicism is the armor of the disappointed, but it leads to paralysis. Curiosity is the path of the awakened. It keeps you soft, present, and human. Freedom comes from staying open to truth, even after disillusionment. Where have you allowed cynicism to close a door that curiosity might reopen? Today, replace one judgment with a question. Instead of assuming, ask, what else could be true here? Let that question guide your next step. Chapter 11: Writing Your Own Script. There comes a moment when the silence after rejection is quieter than the noise of approval. When the emptiness of performance is heavier than the risk of being seen. That moment is not the end of a story. It's the blank page. The place where the old script ends, and the true one begins. Writing your own script is not about rebellion for its own sake. It's not a loud exit or a dramatic declaration. It's a slow, deliberate return to authorship. It's the act of picking up the pen that was placed in someone else's hand and saying, "This is mine now." For most of your life, your lines were written by others. Family gave you your values. Culture gave you your metrics. School gave you your steps. Religion, media, peers, they all left ink on your pages, some of it beautiful, some of it binding, and most of it unquestioned. But now, in this pause, you are offered something rare, the chance to write with awareness. This does not mean discarding everything you were taught. It means examining it with sober eyes, holding it up to the light of your lived experience, asking, is this belief still true for me? Does this story serve who I am now, or is it residue from a time I no longer inhabit? The danger is in rewriting out of reaction. Rejecting everything to feel free often leads to a new cage, just with different decor. True authorship is quieter. It doesn't need to announce itself, it doesn't need to be shocking. It only needs to be honest, rooted, chosen. This is not a one-time act. It's a lifelong practice. Scripts are sneaky. They creep in through language, comparison, fear. You'll be tempted to perform again, especially when the world claps louder for your costume than your truth. But the pen remains in your hand. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to stay conscious. What you choose to include matters. How you define success, purpose, love, rest, these are not inherited. They are authored. You can decide that joy matters more than achievement, that boundaries are a form of self-respect, that quiet mornings count as progress, that art, nature, or slowness is sacred. There are no wrong lines, only unconscious ones. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to revise. You are allowed to look at a paragraph of your life and say, this no longer fits, and then rewrite it, even mid-scene, even with ink still wet. Writing your own script doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sovereign. And when you live from that place, you give others permission to do the same, not by convincing them, just by embodying something real, something unreplicable. The world needs fewer actors and more authors, people who refuse to perform a story that empties them, people who walk off the stage and into the open field, people who build lives not from scripts, but from soul. You are not a character. You are not a prop. You are the author. You've always been. And now that you know, you can begin. Writing your own script is a return to conscious authorship, not reactive rebellion. You have the right to question, revise, and rewrite your beliefs as you evolve. Living by your own truth gives others quiet permission to do the same. What part of your current life still feels like someone else's script? Choose one belief, habit, or rule you followed without question. Pause, reflect, and rewrite it in a way that aligns with who you are now. Chapter 12: Freedom in the Mirror. Freedom is not a place you arrive. It is a person you remember. You've spent years looking outward for liberation, for the system to change, for the approval to come, for the world to make space for who you really are. But what if freedom was never out there? What if it always waited in one place, in the mirror? The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't flatter either. It shows you not just your face, but your history, the roles you've played, the beliefs you've worn like second skin, the lines you've memorized, the masks you've mastered, and behind all that, the eyes that have watched it all unfold, quietly wondering if there was more. To stand in the mirror without the costume, without the applause, without the illusion, is to meet yourself again. Not the self that was constructed, the self that was covered, the one before performance, or before programming. Before the world's script replaced your own. Freedom is not loud. It doesn't shout with declarations or demand validation. It settles into the body like breath. It walks into the room without needing to explain itself. It speaks gently because it no longer needs to convince. It simply is. And when you stand in the mirror and recognize that presence, you will know. You will know because there is no rush, no proving, no pretending. The person looking back is not perfect, but they are whole. They carry scars and contradictions, wisdom and softness, fire and stillness, and all of it belongs. Nothing needs to be hidden to be held. This is the quiet revolution, not changing the world first, but reclaiming your reflection, owning the shape of your thoughts, the rhythm of your days, the yes and the no that come from within, not from fear. This is the root of all true transformation, sovereignty over the self. You are not the voice that told you to shrink. You are not the grade, the title, the label. You are not your trauma, your performance, your resume. You are the awareness beneath it all, the author of the next sentence, the breath between the stories. And while the world may still reward the act, you no longer need it. You no longer chase the scripts that kept you safe but silent. You no longer confuse being seen with being known. You've come home, to the only place where freedom can begin, full presence in your own life. And not every day will feel like flight. Some days the old roles will whisper again. Some mornings the mask will call out. But now you know. Now you've seen. And once seen, the illusion cannot be unseen. So return to the mirror often. Not to fix yourself, but to remember, to look without flinching. To meet the eyes that have waited patiently through it all. And say, I see you. I trust you. I'm with you now. This is what it means to be free. Not untouchable, but undefended. Not perfect, but present. Not scripted, but sovereign. And you don't have to go anywhere to find it. Just here. Just now. Just you. Freedom isn't found in rebellion or performance, it's reclaimed in presence. The truest self lives beneath the layers of illusion, waiting to be seen. Coming home to yourself is the foundation of lasting liberation. When you look in the mirror, do you see who you've become, or who you truly are? Stand in front of a mirror, in stillness. No judgment, no correction, just witness. Speak one sentence of truth aloud, to yourself, from yourself. But let it land. Take care, and be well.